Hello and welcome to the first video of the C++ series where we make a mini game, if you could even call it that. We will start with an introduction to C++, what it can be used for, how to write a few basic applications, how to compile code, and as well as some object-oriented programming. This is parts of what we go on to today. We will basically create a project, create a player and an enemy class, and then see how things go from there, right? So this is an IDE called Qt Creator. You can download it online. It's open source. You can get a commercial version if you want to. You get a bit better support with that, but what we do, this is way more than we need. You should be able to find it and download the proper compiler. With that, it actually guides you through all that. So what we do is, as you can see, I pressed new project and we click on non-Qt project and we will select plain C++ application and I choose that. So I get a prompt asking me for the project and I call this CPP tutorial, and you can choose a different folder where you would like to create your project, and I select next. The build system is QMake or CMake. For us, this is more than what we need. It's good enough. We just press next, finish, and there I already am. This is my first project. So now, if you have never used an IDE or a compiler before, this does most of the things for you. All I have to do is I select build, and then I click on build all, and then I can select compile output, and it shows me everything I need to see. It's all fine, no errors, nothing. So if you press on this arrow, you will see a little window popping up seeing what your program is. For now, we get a little console window. However, if you press on here, yeah, I don't think you see the window. However, this is not what we want to focus on right now. We want to actually create a player class and an enemy class. So we select add new and we select C++ class if it's not selected for you, and you select choose. The class name we call player, and everything else right now we do not have to worry about. So I select next and it gives it a few seconds, and now it's added to our project. Since we have done the player, we will do the same for the enemy. Enemy done. So wait a few more seconds for that is to be done. So first we see the layout. Now we have the CPP files, which are the C++ files. Usually they contain the logic and the definition of whatever is defined in the header class, in the .h class. So let's look into player.h. So you see these lines. This is for avoid conflicts, and then we have class player, public player, and a few brackets. The brackets are for opening and closing, obviously, right? And then we have public. Public means that whatever is inside the public definition is accessible to everybody in that object. So right now the player constructor is available in that object. We can add a second constructor with, let's say, give it an attack damage and a health. So int health and int attack. So now we added a second constructor, and that is publicly available. So now we add private. Private is only available to whatever members are in public. Nobody else has access to that. So we add int underscore player health, int underscore attack damage, and then we do a string underscore player name. So a string is actually an object which comes with a C++ standard library. To use that, we include that library. For that, we call include string. And string is part of the std namespace, of the standard namespace. So we do using namespace std. And now that player name is available to us. So now we have a constructor, a second constructor, and now we have three member variables: player health, attack damage, and player name. Those will be holding our attack, damage, our health, and the name for the player. And we actually are able to modify those later on and retrieve them. And this is done through accessors and mutators. An accessor is a function which accesses the member variable and can return values. So to access, since this is an integer means it's numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we would do this float, we can actually have floating point values, and if we have double, we have a wider range of floating point values. But this is not needed for us right now. What we do is we do int as a return value, health, and then we add const. Const is for that we cannot modify this value during the return time. Health is the function name itself with the 2 brackets, and it does not take any parameter in. And int itself is the return value. So what we return has to be an int. If I try to return player name in health, it will throw us an error. So that's the accessor. Now we do a mutator. We need to modify the health, right? Because when we get attacked and get hit, we lose some health. So for that, we do void for no return value, health, now open bracket, and we do const int health and close it. So the const again, so that value we type in the parameter is not allowed to be modified. So now we have 2 functions, health, and there's no name conflict because C++ allows us, if there's different return values or different parameters, it's called function overloading. So we do the same for attack and for name. So we do int attack, const, void attack, const int attack damage. Right, and the same for name. We do string name, const, and then void name, const string player name. Right, so this is our basic layout of the object. So we have 2 player constructors, we have health functions, we have attack functions, and we have name functions. So let's define the logic for those functions, okay? For that, we go into the player.cpp, and you can see this is including the player.h, and those quotation marks mean it's included in your local project. Yes, you can see there is a constructor here already, but what we have here is these 3 values. We need to define those values, otherwise the constructor, the compiler, depending on which compiler you use, will throw an error. So to give those an initial value, to initialize those variables, we do colon underscore player health, open bracket 0 close bracket. That initializes the player health variable. We do a comma underscore player name, which is a string, so we do 2 quotation marks to have an empty string, and then we do underscore attack damage, open bracket 0 close bracket. So in this constructor now, when it compiles and you call this constructor, it will create 3 member variables where we are allowed to store values in. Oh, I pressed something here. Anyway, let's see if it builds so far, if we get any errors. Compile output. Oh, it's complaining somewhere. Perfect, let's go in here. And player health and attack damage, string player health. So player name will be initialized after reorder. Oh, those are just warnings. Those are just warnings. Player health, attack damage, player name. Okay, so reorder. Let's do the reordering. Maybe that actually fixes it. I never had that message showing up. It's kind of odd, actually. So the order was health, attack, player name. Let's see what's happening. Yes, save it. Interesting. So reordering this actually fixed. I've never had that showing up. I'm using a new C++ version, so well, it's okay. We fixed it, right? So now we have the constructor, and now we have a second constructor. So it's player, but this one has int health and int attack, as you can see, and it fills it out for us, which is beautiful. If you open the brackets, and now we type in this, and now we have two options. Depending on your IDE, you can just press dot and it fills in an arrow for you, a pointing arrow, or you do the pointing arrow by yourself and you get this to show up for me. So when I do player health equals health, that means that this member here is being assigned this value on creation with that constructor. So let's do attack as well. Underscore attack damage equals attack. As you see, we have nothing for the name, so that's what we need the accessor and mutator function for the name in later. However, we will do this in order, otherwise it may complain again. So we will start with health, attack, and then name. I don't think it's gonna complain, but let's do this. So we do int because it was a return value, right? Player double colon and then health, right? And after that, we added a const. We need to add that here too. And now what we do is we return the health, return this, and then underscore, press the wrong button, player health. As you can see, when I remove this, you see there is a little lock in here. That means it's a private member and not everybody has access to that except functions I am defining in this file. So now I'm returning player health and I want to set the player health, right? So for that I do void health, but I had const int health, right? There it is, constant health. Then I do this underscore player health equals health. That sets a new health value. And we basically do the same now with attack and name. So int player attack const return this attack damage and void player attack constant attack damage. We do this attack damage equals attack damage. And then we do string player name const return this player name. And now the mutator function is a void player name const string name return this player name equals name, right? So now we have a mutator and an accessor for health, an accessor and a mutator for attack, an accessor and a mutator for name. Let's see if this builds. Oh, I missed something here somewhere. Oh yeah, I missed a semicolon. Perfect. So you need to add the semicolon to end the current line. So I added that and let's build again. There we go. So now we have a player class, a player object. So we do the same for enemy. As you can see, I will just do something what we are not supposed to do. And I will copy this because I'm simply too lazy to write this all out. And everything player, I will just rename with enemy. Player name, enemy, p enemy, player name, there's more player in here, enemy name. So I think this is all of the player inside this class. We already eliminated the player in here. Now we have to do the same in the enemy CPP, right? But since I'm lazy and the classes are essentially the same, I will just copy all this, put this into the enemy here. Oh, I pressed the wrong, copied the wrong information. There we go. And I will just use replace all the players with enemy. This is not something you're supposed to do. I'm just doing this for the sake of being lazy. Because I am. I mean lazy because I'm lazy. Anyway, oh, there's some more player health. Okay, let's see if this builds. What errors we get? Oh, we have not included the string. So this is what happens when you do not include the proper functions. Include string using name space std. There we go. And let's do this again. Player health. Now it's asking for player health. We don't have player, we took that out, right? So this is what happens when you copy instead of actually writing. You have to fix a whole lot of things and you break things, which is normally not what you want to do. So there, I'm showing you what not to do. However, we just compiled a player class and an enemy class, which is exactly what we wanted. So in the main function, we are now removing the using namespace std because we already have this from before. We will do include, remember the quotation marks for the local includes, enemy.h, and then we will include the player.h. And now what we will do is we remove this one first. We create an integer x equals 0 to initialize it. And the next thing we do is we create a player. So to create a player, we type in player, and then we use an asterisk. Okay? So the asterisk is also a pointer, which is a value to an address in your memory. And with the name, we adding player PL. That means we can access that memory location through the name PL, which is pretty handy in my opinion. So and then we do equals new player, right? So that creates a new player object. And I just remembered in enemy CPP, we are not initializing that constructor. So I will just do the thing which we are not supposed to do and copy again. And fix the code and rename the player with enemy. Oh no, there's a 7 in there. Anyway, it's fixed. So now we have a new player object here, and now we give the player a name, PL, and then we add this arrow. And this arrow basically means that we are accessing the function like the accessor or the mutator, right? We are not allowed to access those with a lock because those are private, but these ones here we are allowed to access. So we use name and we go inside the brackets here and we can choose a name. So for that we do quotation mark and then I choose my name, set. Then player dot health. And I just choose 50 health in that case. Actually, no quotation here, just an integer value. And then player dot attack, we having 8 attack damage. Okay, so now we have a player object. Let's create an enemy. So enemy n equals new enemy. Same thing, n dot name is enemy. It's a really bad enemy, so it will only have 10 health, and the enemy will only have 5 attack value. Okay, so now what we do is we put a small loop in to make sure we can run until one of those two is dead. So what we are going to do is we will create a while loop. A while loop is basically running until the condition is met inside that loop, it will run. So while, and remember x from before, x is not equal to 4. Until that statement is not true, we keep running. When that statement is true, the x not equal 4, as soon as that becomes true, we will quit. That means x has to be 4. Oh, complicated. So we will call cout. Cout means call out to a display. So we will add text to a display output. Player health, and then we do PL health to retrieve the health, and we will add and L after that. So and L means and line, and then we go into a no line, so we don't have to add new line all the time. We will do the same for the enemy health. So, and we will write a little menu, a little text menu, where we have choices 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 is attack. And then 2 is something we have not implemented, use health pack. We don't have health pack implemented, so we will check that later. 3 is stay put. And number 4 will now quit. So how do we get the input? Well, C++ comes with a function called cin. And for input, we use the other side of the arrows pointing to the right, and we select X as an input. So we call into X. So now, how do we check now that we have a value in X, and what value is it? So we do if X to equal sign as a comparison 1. Right? So if I have 1 equal sign, I'm assigning. With a second equal sign, I'm comparing. If X equals 1, and as you can see, you always have to add those brackets for a new statement. So what we do now is really, really simple logic. We get the enemy health. Enemy health equals enemy.health minus the attack value from the player. So player attack. So we are using a subtraction on 2 integer values. And then we set the enemy health. N health, enemy health. As you can see, this is how function overloading works. We can do stuff like this. And then we do int player health, because the enemy attacks back once the player attacks the enemy. It's the player.health minus the enemy.attack. And then we set the player health to the new player health. So basically what this does is it gets the enemy health, does the attack, and then it sets the enemy health to the new value. So that is if X is 1. So now else if X compared to 2. What happens then? Well, we have no health pack yet. If you want, you can add that. No health pack yet. And that's it. So else if X equals 3, you stay put as a player, but the enemy doesn't stay put as a player. So we already have the attack code. We just reuse the attack code for the enemy. And else if... Actually, that is all the statements we do. If we type in 4 as X, we will go right, finish that loop. So we don't need to do anything here. So now we have check 1, 2, and 3. What if the players run out of health now? We need to add a check-in for that, right? So if the player... Oh, not player.health. We are not allowed to do that. If player health is smaller or equal to 0, right? We have cout. The player is dead. You lose. And then we will X equal 4 to just end the while loop right here. But else if the enemy health is smaller or equal to 0, what is then? So cout, the enemy is dead, you win, and else. So what I'm doing now is I'm adding a break. Break means that you reach that line of code and it will end the current loop you are in. This can be a for loop or a while loop. The current loop you are in, it will be ended. So let's see what happens if we build. Oh, I'm missing something here somewhere. If X equal 1, primary expression before token. Oh yeah, I have player.attack. I'm not allowed to do player.attack because player is a class object, not the object itself. So I need to do this PL. So if I save now, and as you can see, there's a dot here. I'm not allowed to use the dot when I'm having a pointer. A pointer has to always be an arrow. So let's build this again. there's another where I have a dot in here. Oh yeah, here. It's because I'm using a dot, and then normally it autofills the arrow, the pointing arrow for me. So there we go. But that is sweet that it tells you actually where the mistakes are and the errors and so on. So build again. Perfect. Compile output. There's nothing. So now, if you use that, you can debug your code. We do not need that for now. But what we do here is we can run the code. As I said, you will not see the screen if I run it. Just run it on your own and you will be able to play around with those values. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is it for this tutorial. If you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe, support me on Patreon. I thank you so much for watching. I wish you a wonderful day. Bye bye.